Awesome. All right. Hi again. I'm Julian, um, co-founder and CEO of Bezel, which is a collaborative spatial design tool that some of you may know of. And today I'm going to talk about how to design for reality. Thanks again for joining us on a Saturday. I will try my best to make it worthwhile. And I do want to not take up all 2 hours. I think I said 2 hours on the event page, but I do want to kind of keep it a bit shorter than that, maybe around an hour. And yeah, I'll briefly go through what spatial design really means from an XR perspective today, and talk about Bezel a little bit, how it came to be, what it's used for, why people use it, and then go through a couple demos, because I know a lot of you all are coming from the design industry and that kind of background. And I know a lot of you are excited to kind of get your hands on to actual design work in 3D. So yeah, we'll go through a Bezel demo and then also a Vision OS simulator demo, which I know some of you have asked for as well. And yeah, I also wanted to save a lot of questions or a lot of time for questions and answers at the end. So please, as I'm talking, just think about, what was something I'm curious about, or what's something I want to talk about at the end, because I do want this to be a two-way conversation as much as possible. All righty. So with that in mind, I will get started. This is Stinson Beach, California. And a couple years ago, I was sitting here on the sand on this nice sunny day in the afternoon. And I want you to imagine yourself also sitting there, and you're looking out into the ocean, and you hear some kids giggling on the side, right? And when you look over, you see that they're sitting around a sandcastle, and they're building it with their plastic shovels, and they're putting sand on top of the castle, and they're imagining how big it could be, and it feels so natural, right? It just feels so fun, and that's just what kids do when they come together on a beach and they play and they just build a sandcastle together. And with that as context, I would go to work the next day. So yeah, for context, I worked at Oculus, the company behind a lot of the VR headsets that you see today, the Quest 1, 2, 3 from Meta. And I was tasked with building out a lot of the parts of the operating system, the OS that would go inside the Quest headsets, right? So if you ever put on a VR headset before, you probably experienced these UI panel apps that float around you, and you can interact with them. And it's really important that we get these interactions right, especially when you're using hands like this in XR, because the whole computer is just floating around you, and there's a lot more at stake, right? If the app or the OS crashes on your phone, it's just a small rectangle in front of you. But if the headset crashes, your whole world is going dark and jittering, and it just causes nausea, right? It's just a whole nother level. So with that in mind, I would often work with designers. And back then, the designers would use tools like Figma, which a lot of you may know, if you're coming from the design world, around just how these apps would work, how the UI in these panel apps would be positioned. And they would bring these Figma designs to meetings. And then whenever they do, managers would ask hey, how do I view these Figma designs in headset though, right? Because obviously they're all 2D canvas designs, and in the OS, things are in 3D. And it's really important that we get these interactions right, this whole spatial experience correct for users before we ship it. And the answer would be, we would have to partner with a Unity developer, right? And I know a lot of you may also know Unity as the game engine that ships out a bunch of beautiful games out in the world today. But the issue would be when they work with, prototypers that use Unity, the process would take a really long time. So oftentimes it would be a couple of weeks at least to kind of put together an interactive 3D prototype and C# script some of the behaviors, and then you got to export the package out to like the headset. And this was also during COVID, so you would have to work remotely and like try to share these packages, and it's just, you know, it was a complicated mess. And so this is the situation that we were in, right? It's like we have a lot of designers coming from the Figma world, where they're using tools, these 2D design tools optimized for 2D screens, like your phone or your desktop. And then you also have a lot of these prototypers and game devs almost coming from the Unity side, where they're really used to a more advanced version of how design and development is done. And there's this vacuum in the top left corner here around how a spatial design tool could help people work, right? Because there's no easy way for people to get involved. And so I asked the lead prototyper at Oculus back then, when we were going through these processes, and I was like, hey, is there like an easier way for us to get there, for designers to create these 3D prototypes quickly? And the answer would be no, it's just how the industry works right now. And so I essentially left Oculus with the prototyper and the designer, Dennis and Cecilia, respectively, and co-founded Bezel, which, if I can go on to the next slide, you can now see on the top left corner how Bezel is now used to take that complex multi-week process using something like Unity into a couple minutes or a couple hours, because it's simply a web app, just like Figma, that you go to on your browser. And you can now get that link, that file link, in the URL bar, to open it also in the headset's browser. And now you have an XR design immediately. So, in summary, Bezel really is an easy to use tool for designers in mind. So no code at all. Product designers can focus on the experience instead of worrying about the C# scripting of game development. And then the second thing, which is really important, is that it's accessible across all platforms, including both laptops and headsets, right? Because realistically, a lot of people spend most of their creative process time in front of their computers, not in today's headset hardware. So we really wanted to optimize the tool for today's process, just with where people are at today. And, I also know of a lot of different tools. Like, for example, one that Apple came out with the Reality Pro Composer, which, wouldn't also work with like Microsoft computers, for example. So being in the browser was really important. And then thirdly, being multiplayer with team collaboration in mind. It's no secret that design is a team sport at this point, right? To go through the design process, you have to go through a lot of different designers, as well as engineers, PMs, and different reviewers and stakeholders in the process. And they all need to access this tool. And telling someone to download Unity and experience something like this themselves is just not a feasible option most of the time. And so that's how the Bezel really came to be. And since then, we've seen a lot of different exciting designs being created for AR, VR in Bezel by our creator community, which has been super, super fun. We call ourselves Besties, so BEZTIES, Besties. And yeah, I also want to take a step back to look at the broader picture of where we are in the history of computing, right? Because, as you might know, Apple came out with the Vision Pro last month. And it's a pretty big deal for the industry, for the XR industry, because we know that when Apple usually comes in with a new product category, they commit to it for a long time. And it really opens up this whole product line of different product versions that they would iterate through. And this is a screenshot from one of their presentations. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of the apps that you see that surround a person, a lot like the apps that I showed you with the Oculus OS, they're a lot 2D. Like it's very rare to see these apps using the 3D spatial space around them in a native way. And I think this is a natural phase that we're in, but it's sort of this uncanny sort of awkward valley that we're in, where apps, the content, have to adapt to the form factor, to the hardware, right? And one analogy to this would be when the iPad came out. I'm not sure if you remember this, but a lot of for the first few years or so, like a lot of the apps were like kind of small in the center of the screen because they would be ported from iPhone apps. And you would see this very pixelated view if you zoom in to fill in the iPad screen. And it's that phase of a hardware transition where you realize that a lot of the apps that worked in the past still need to work, with the new hardware, but it's different. And, I think spatial computing is no exception here. I think a lot of these 2D apps that are coming in are first going to be 2D, which is fine. Like that's just how it has been for 2D screens, because, we all have that phone that we carry around, which is a 2D rectangular screen. But eventually, because the system and the hardware form factor supports this natively 3D content, a lot of this app ecosystem will also become more 3D. So, as an example, or even, more broadly speaking, we could look at how personal computing with the first Macintosh, coming out in like 1984, how that inspired a lot of different types of tools to come out. And like Photoshop, I think, came out in a similar time frame back then. And people still use Photoshop today. And then 2007, you get the iPhone coming out, and then a lot of different apps joining in the ecosystem, and this huge proliferation of different experiences that you can have, because now you have a truly portable computer in your hands. And then we also see this coming of the Vision Pro and this whole new world of spatial content, right? It's not just apps that are locked into a 2D bezel anymore. It's a whole canvas that surrounds you in the world. And that has a lot of different implications on how you design content for this type of platform, and what kind of content is so compelling that people decide to put on the headset, in their homes. I think that's a very different time that we're in, but as we think about these experiences. As an example, you can think about Airbnb. A lot of us know Airbnb with this website form factor that we have, and then these mobile apps that we have. But what if we could actually experience these homes before we rent them out, right? What would a spatial app for Airbnb look like if they decided to build one over the coming years? Well, that's exactly what Daniel, an XR designer that some of you may know, did. Is we can now see it like into these homes and these rooms that would exist from a portal interface, right? So just as you would, have these photos outlined in a more 2D mechanism, you would now also see these rooms, these 3D rooms that you can actually walk into and explore. And I know like different companies like Matterport are already doing this with some of the houses out there, but what if that's more widespread, right, for people to experience before they rent it out? With that in mind, I want us to kind of go through a demo of Bezel and how it all fits in together. I will give you all some time to kind of settle in and go to bezel.it, bezel.it. And then you will see a button to try the beta, and then you can quickly create an account. After a couple questions, it will take you to a tutorial file. But once you're at the tutorial file, you can click on the Bezel logo on the top left to go back to files. And then you will end up in this gallery page. So I'll just, give everyone a minute or two to get there. There's no rush. And once we feel like some people are in this page, I'll get started again with the demo.
Suppose I should just look, but are you taking investment, Julian? Or it could be an offline thing, I suppose.
Yeah, we are invested from a VC perspective.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Also, if people are interested, I would actually like to know what kind of work they do, like what you do. Are you a designer, a student learning XR design, or an engineer, or just because that would also help me understand how deep I would go with some of these tutorials.
Yeah.
UX designer.
Yeah, please
awesome.
put
Get that in the chats.
Yeah, put on the chats. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Designer building startup, product design, UI UX, AI shape, product designer, 2D designer, studying XR design. Yep, we're seeing a lot of people kind of coming from that type of persona, right? Like you're currently working in 2D design, 2D UI design, but you want to learn more about XR design and 3D design and what that all means. Study interactive design for 20 years. Wow. VPR enthusiast, learning about product design. Architectural design. We're actually seeing a lot of people coming in from the architecture and the interior design world, because a lot of the concepts that you learn in spatial design for 3D architecture and interior design reflects directly to how the world around you works. And spatial computing is essentially that. Spatial computing is just you have the world around you, and how do you design content for that? Product designer, Immerse. Student starting HCI, human computer interaction. That's amazing. Game design student. Yeah, game design is also very interesting, because now you have a lot of games which are already 3D, right? Some of your favorite games that you play on your computers or consoles like PlayStation, a lot of them are already 3D, but if you put on your VR headset, that just becomes actually 3D. Okay, product owner, weathered many XR winters. Yes, the XR winters for sure. Cool. Okay, with that in mind, you can now click on the Bezel walkthrough file here. That would let you open a copy of this tutorial file. I already copied it, so I'll just open that here. Yeah, John, I hear you. Yeah. Some people for sure are a bit more doubtful or a bit more curious about like how XR would impact a lot of our lives. I think it'll take time for the hardware as well as the software content to catch up to a place where a lot of us want to put on a headset. I don't view the headset at this time as something that you would put on for many hours a day. I think it's more of a device that you would put on for spurts of time to experience something that's really compelling. So I know that a lot of the use cases that Apple used during their presentation were situated around like media, right? A lot of different immersive sort of 3D type of media that you could put yourself in, and it is a lot more compelling than staring at a 2D screen. So I think that's one way to look at it. All right, so when you're in this file, you will see a couple things. You can see these objects in 3D, which are all Bezel objects that were either created in Bezel or imported from something like Blender or different types of 3D modeling tools. And I'll kind of go step by step through these sections to show you what Bezel is capable of today. So one thing, the first thing to note is the command center. So that's just how the app works in terms of how all these different commands and actions are organized. So once you start typing, you will immediately see the command center activated. So let's say a simple shape, like the simplest shape I can create is like a box, right? So all I do is I press B for box and I press spacebar. And now I can draw a box like that. And now you have a 3D box in front of you. Something else I should probably talk about is navigation. So it really depends on what device input you're using. If you're on a trackpad, you can kind of use your 2-finger gestures to kind of zoom in, zoom out as well. Just dragging with a pointer click drag would help you rotate and pan with those 2-finger gestures. If you're using a mouse, you can pan with your left click mouse or your right click mouse button, and dragging with the wheel button pressed would help you pan as well. So just a couple things, and scrolling would zoom you in and out. And yeah, once we have a box like this, there are a couple things we could do. We could bevel it to make it rounder and look nicer. We could copy and paste it, the usual command CV. We could move it around with these 3 axes. So the green one refers to, I believe, the y-axis, and then the red refers to the x-axis, and then the z is the blue axis here. So they all move just freely in 3D space. One thing that might be interesting is, how do I bring this to 3D object quickly to snap onto this object, right? So I can activate the move tool here at the top left. And the move tool, with that activated, I can click on this corner in the bottom left and then drag that into this corner. So now you have 2 boxes that are also snapped into each other. And you can obviously change the materials. So the material contains the colors and the styles that you can change with that type of shape as well. Yeah. So with the material, you can also get a bit more realistic with them as well. So if you see a sphere like that or a cube like that, a lot of these materials are from outside. You have a marble cylinder there, and you would essentially click on the material for this object and then add something here, right? So let me see if I can draw like a cylinder, which is from the objects menu here. You can grab a cylinder if you don't want to use the command center just yet. And the way you do that is you drag the base and you extend it up. And if you have like a PNG or like some type of object material around you, you can also then create that type of texture. Let me see if I can get maybe like a marble texture in the background for this cylinder. Upload image, desktop, marble, and it's uploading this marble PNG. And you see that reflected here as well.
Can I use like a UV map or a reverse? Because sometimes if you want to, for example, when I create a prototype, the 360 videos, either you use Skybox in Unity, or you can use a Sphere but reverse UV. So is there any way we can do reverse UV and enlarge it, and people will be inside it and see different types of, I don't know, like video or texture?
Yeah. So if you go to this sphere, I can try something similar here, upload image, the same marble. What I can do is I could enlarge it with this square button here, and then also have it on the backside only. So now you can, this is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah. And can you put like a video textures on top of it?
Right now we don't support video, but that's also on our roadmap.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because you see like 360 videos. If you put in Unity, it's kind of texture, and you kind of implement it and drag and drop. That would be really helpful. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that would be really helpful too. But yeah, those are some tips and tricks you could do once you get more used to Bezel as well. And you can nowadays with generative AI, you can generate like skyboxes and these HDRIs where you can actually just input here. And these are all different types of like HDRIs that you could also use, which comes in really handy. Next up, I will go through collaboration. So as you can tell, this is a web app, and web apps like Figma are by nature collaborative. So you can see my local profile here at the top. If I don't want to share this file with everyone right now, just because they'll have like 30, 40 different people in the file. But if you share this file link with someone else, like your coworker or your teammate or your friend, that they would also be able to join you, just like how Figma works. So that's more for real-time collaboration. If you want it more asynchronous collaboration, we also have a comments feature where you can just add a comment to whatever you're seeing. So if I go to this Pikachu and then say I click on the comments feature, and I just tap on the Pikachu, I say Pikachu looks a bit too still. What happens is I now have a comment here that others can also view when they open this link. So if I go in here and then I click on this comment, it zooms me into the angle that I wrote this, that the author of this comment wrote this, and you can experience that from that as well. Cool. Animations. So animations are a very important part of 3D experiences and spatial experiences, right? I mean, even for 2D apps, animation provides a lot of delight for UIs as well. But if we have let's say I go to the Bezel library, the asset library here, I can add like a bike. You can get this bike. I will add the bike here. It's just an easy drag from the asset library into the scene that you now own. Obviously, you could also change the values of the bike wheels and such. But now I can add an animation so that this bike goes from left to right. So we have this prototyping state machine where this bike is currently in its base state, and I want to add a new state to it. So I'm just going to drag this like line circle that comes out into a new state, state 1. And with state 1 selected, highlighted with the line border, I will have the bike move here. So if I click between base state and state 1, you can see that the bike has different 3D positions between them. And with that in mind, I will click on play. So play mode essentially opens up a prototype mode that you might be familiar with something like Figma, right? It opens a whole new tab that you can experience the file with. I will see, because this file has a lot of models, it might take some time to load. But you can also see this arrow represents the interaction of what's going to happen to this asset, to this object. So the event that's going to trigger it will be like on pointer down. And on pointer down could either be your mouse pointer down, as well as your like VR controller pointer down, or if you're using your hands, like a click would also work. So if I go to animation and click on the bike, you see that moved. I'm not sure what the frame rate looks like in Zoom, but it's 60 FPS here.
Is that possible for the wheel? For example, like you can import an FBX, and then under it, it has all different components, and you can animate individual one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so you can either import an already animated model if you have that, or you can animate it inside Bezel as well.
And is the animation like, can I export, for example, if I create an animation, can I export to, for example, Unity and as a package, and I can just put in? Yeah.
Right. So that's also something that right now you could export the whole scene as like a GLTF into Unity. And we're also working on some improvements there as well. So stay tuned for updates.
Yeah, very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you reset, when you're in play mode, it resets all the states to the base state of the object. So if I click again on this bike, I will see it roll over. If I wanted to Dom's point, have the wheels also spin, I could like click into these wheels and then like rotate them and then spin them. Okay, so in this model, the wheels are stuck together, but like you would spin the wheel with the spokes, and then that would be a sub animation in the parent animation. I won't go through that right now. And yeah, so within the prototype mode, you would access a lot of different cool parts. So if I added almost like a start button, right? So let's say I wanted to add a start text. So I add a text here, and I say start. I'm gonna make it bold. Now I can actually use the start text as the trigger for the bike to move. And I'll show you what that looks like too. So for the bike animation that we have here, I can click on the interaction. And for the trigger object, I can click on replace trigger object down here. And if I click on that, and then I click on the text object, the text is now the trigger for the bike to move. And if I go back here and I click on start, the start text button is now the bike, is now triggering the bike animation. Cool. Yeah, so you can play around with that. Another cool thing might be to add different types of backings for this button as well. So if I had like a plane here, I won't go too deep into these either, but and I like round the corners, around the corners a little bit, and extruded that a little bit to have like a 3D button, and I can move this button to on top of this button and center it, and yeah, so that could be like your 3D button for a start as well.
So can I assume for text, it's the vector kind of types, but it's a mesh, right?
Right.
It's a mesh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So everything kind of fits into the mesh renderer. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the Figma integration. So I realized that a lot of the people posting what they do are coming from the 2D design world, UI, UX, product design. And chances are you're using a tool like Figma, and we have an integration so that you can bring in a lot of the Figma frames into Bezel and start interacting with them as well. And so you will be able to bring in a Figma frame. I won't go too deep into the Figma integration right now, just because that would take like an extra 5 to 10 minutes. But I will also link you to a Figma integration video that shows you how these prototypes could work. But yeah, essentially, this texture is coming from Figma, where this UI was designed on that 2D tool. And then once it's brought in, it would be brought in as a texture. Cool. And with that, I can also try to visualize one of these files in the Quest headset. So you can kind of see how that works in VR as well. So I'm just gonna go to another gallery tutorial file, the frosted glass panel. Thanks, Marcio, for sharing the Figma integration. This is also found in your gallery grid. It's just called the frosted glass panel, which, as you know, the frosted glass is an important part of the Apple design system for the Vision OS. And with this, I can add, this is also imported from Figma, and I can add a quick interaction, let's say, where I will add, feel free to follow along by opening this file in the gallery as well. You can just click on the logo and then back to files. I can add a state to this file where the second state goes, let's say, a little smaller, right? So, or it could, let's say, it like fades out. So if I bring it to if I get the layer opacity to come down to like 0, you will see that this UI starts visible and then it becomes invisible. And when this is happening, I can have the click on the pointer down of the UI plane to trigger that transition. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to open this file in my Quest headset to show you how this looks like in XR. So I'm going to try to like cast my screen so you can see what I'm seeing in the headset. I know that's possible through the casting app. Hopefully that comes out in this bar. Awesome. Right, so you can see what I'm seeing in the headset. If I open the browser, I can just go to bezel.it. Make it a bit larger. And then I want to click on, let's see, just wait for these files to load. Click on the frosted glass panel, copy, which is this file right here. Once that's in, all I got to do is click on this View in VR button in the top right corner. And then once I click on the View in VR button, it takes me into the immersive scene of how the scene works. Oh, okay, so I need to make sure that the panel starts in the right position. So this UI would reflect where the current what the current state of this app is. So if you see the app here, and then I turn it into state 1 here, the UI disappears. Yeah, looking through this view isn't that great, but I would just want to show you like how this all works. I can also change the environment out. So yeah, so the state change I make in the editor is directly reflected into the headset immediately. So once again, right now in the headset, I see the UI in the panel, and then because I have the state 1, the UI disappears in the headset too.
Can I ask you one question? As for the 3D model and textures, before I listened to Poly Web XR, some like kind of like a summit, and there are some developers mentioned about Web XR. One of the challenge is that the 3D mesh, there's a certain types of kind of like it will kind of compress the quality of the 3D mesh or textures when it migrates to web. And then also there will be some latencies. So in this case, like how, for example, like before I work for Spark AR and like I work on some tutorials for Spark AR and the Lens Studio back in 2019. And during that time, Spark AR's upload size, entire size, the file size is 100 MB, and Lens Studio's uploading size maximum is 8 MB. So I'm wondering, is there any like limitations for the file size of the 3D mesh, and also as for the texture size? Yeah, my question.
Yeah, for sure. So the general rule of thumb would be the larger the models, like the geometry, as high poly as it gets, as well as the textures, the larger the texture images become, usually that strains the processing power of the headset a little more. So you might experience some lag if you have a lot of different models in there and a lot of different textures in there. So I would encourage people to follow best practices around 3D design, is just to keep textures somewhat minimal, and not have too many like high poly objects in the scene simultaneously.
Will the Wi-Fi affect the performance of the final outcome in the headset Wi-Fi?
Not really, because once the scene is loaded, we load the objects. So from then on, interacting with the scene is more local to the web immersive scene that we have, not dependent necessarily on Wi-Fi.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
And with that, I'm realizing I'm running a bit over time, so I'm just going to transition to the Vision OS simulator. I also recognize that this is only applicable for people who have Apple computers today, like a MacBook. But just to keep it short, if you open, here's a link that contains the whole guide for you to follow. So yeah, save this link if you have a MacBook and you want to try it in the future as well yourself. But for now, I'll just kind of go through that right here. So what I will do is I will open Xcode. Oh, I had a session running, but I will quit and start again just to show you how that works. So if I open Xcode, you do get this thing. I'll create a new project, and if you download the latest version of Xcode, you will now see Vision OS as part of the options for your project platform. And I will create an application for Vision OS. I'll name it a cool app, a spatial app. I'll create it on my desktop. And as you can tell, this is more engineering oriented. So it's obviously not a design tool, but it is more of a like a simulator that you can visualize these designs in, just for this purpose. And pressing on this play button, this build button, would start the scene through the simulator. So let's see if this simulator is going to come out from there. Yeah. And once the simulator opens, I don't really care about the default app right now. So I just wanted to go through what the Safari browser inside the simulator would look like. So you might be able to see that I have this window open, and it's just Safari. And the way you get here is by going into home. So when you boot your simulator, this is what you'll see in the beginning. You get these apps, kind of like the app grid on your iPhone. And if you open Safari here, it opens the browser. And what's cool is Apple enabled WebXR, which is the technology that Bezel uses to port these design files into XR. So if I go in here, I see that the background is off. So let me turn on the background again. Turn on the background. And you will see that the background is now on inside the Vision OS simulator as well. And now all I got to do is press AR. So this prototype button, and it will ask if I want to launch an immersive experience. And once I allow that, I am now inside an immersive experience in the Vision OS. So this shows you how, obviously I'm not in the Vision Pro headset right now, but it shows you how you will be able to design and interact with the Vision Pro headset once Apple ships it next year. So if I change, like before on the Quest headset, and if I change the state of the UI like that, that should also reflect. I'm not sure if the update is going through correctly right now. But yeah, I can.
So one of my question, which is when you use mouse, we have different state. For example, hover over, click. But when we use eyes, how can we show? I mean, hover over, you can show, and click, you can show. And there will be some states, for example, focus state and other different states that how can Bezel start from developing from mouse types of things to eye tracking with the hand click, like how this transition?
Yeah. So yeah, Apple definitely uses a different type of input. The majority of the platform would depend on gaze and taps. So you would look at the element that you're wanting to focus on and just tap your finger to select that, which is a little different from like how Meta has approached the interaction mechanism with like the controllers and the buttons that you would press. We are expecting Apple to put out different types of standards around WebXR to enable more like eye gaze inputs and more tap inputs that would allow you to interact with the Bezel scenes in the immersive experience. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this interaction design paradigm is still evolving as we speak. So yeah, we'll see what happens over time. And with that, I think we could start wrapping up the presentation. Thank you so much for staying on a Saturday and spending time with us. I do want to stay in touch with everyone here. You can join our Discord community at bezel.it/community. That would allow us to answer any of your questions after the call. And if you run into any issues or if you have any feature requests on like what you want to design for 3D in this new spatial computing era, we can answer that. The whole Bezel team is on the community channel. The other thing is I have a QR code to my LinkedIn, so we can also connect more personally. And I read all LinkedIn messages, and so just shoot me a message and we can chat there as well.
Well, thanks so much for sharing, and thanks for all. I mean, you and your team for all this phenomenal work. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course, yeah. Thank you. And yeah, I do want to open some time for Q&A. I know some of you had questions during the presentation as well, but a bit more formally, I want to kind of open the floor for anyone to ask any question as well. Would people be able to unmute and talk, Dom?
Oh,
Or...
yes. Feel free to unmute yourself, or if you like to raise your hand, that's more civilized. It's up to you. Yeah, I'm free for. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. All right. Let me see if there were any questions from the chat first.
Yeah, from the chat. I remember someone asked one question, and just the chat is going very fast.
Will there be a native app
native,
for Mac Windows of Bezel? We don't have a native app just yet, but it could come out in the future. Yeah, we'll see. Someone asked, can we experience on the PC? I'm assuming like a non-Apple PC, then yeah, not right now, because the simulator is only run through Xcode. When will Bezel be out of beta? We'll see. Yeah, we don't have a specific date in mind just yet, but we are seeing that people are getting more and more value out of Bezel. And so we'll have some plans around how we can take this officially out of beta and, hopefully have a team plan that people can sign up on. But we'll always have a free plan so that people can explore and just start designing in XR for fun. Yeah, thank you all for the kind words, Marcio. Thank you.
I think Jim has a question, and later on will be Alex. I'm new to 3D. How can I quickly add assets to the scene? Oh, Julian will answer this later, but Jim, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it looks very exciting. I was wondering, can you import stereoscopic 3D images into Bezel and render them stereoscopically within Bezel?
If you mean like do you mean like a skybox?
No, I mean like a side-by-side 3D image, stereoscopic image that's got the left eye view in the left side and the right eye view on the right side.
I see. I don't know if we support that right now, because what the Bezel does is it takes in the images and then essentially just communicates with the headset hardware, and the hardware OS takes care of what graphics to render on the left eye versus the right eye. So I don't know if any tool will allow you to kind of get that low level with like determining what goes in the left eye and right eye at this time.
Okay, well, that would be a feature request then. Can your world, your little Bezel world that you download into the headset, can that persist between sessions?
Yes, as long as you have the browser tab open between sessions.
As long as you have what?
As long as you have the browser tab open.
Okay, so what if you turn off the headset and then come back and turn it back on? Is all your stuff gone?
All your stuff is there still, but it would just reset to the initial state of the animation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Cool.
So for example, like is Bezel like open the backend for people, for example, like before, I mean that's more for more scale question. Before I use some local types of platform to build X Reality Academy. I mean, that's separate from prototype, but I just want to ask, like, for example, Bubble. I use Bubble and I use Editor X, which is very similar to Webflow back in 2021. and then we create a lot of really nicely laid out the site, and then every page is clickable and very nice. However, for those no-code platform, it's really hard to make them real. For example, like Editor X, we want to make it more like a educational platform, but somehow they invented a language called Bezel. It's not HTML, CSS itself. So when we want to implement some special features, we need to contact their tech team. There's no pop-up for us to create our own feature. So at the end, after 6 months of paying so high fees, monthly subscription, at least 600 per month, just to get that plan, and then also the entire developers code, take support for the local no-code platform, and we build 300 beautiful tappable pages. However, it's impossible for that thing to be independent on the web's live. So at the end, we kind of change to, for example, like our marketing page becomes WordPress, and at the end, we use the open source code Moodle and do more like a PHP and also HTML, and we kind of combine. So I'm wondering, for example, if somebody really loves like Bezel stuff, is there any way they can export and the backend is HTML, CSS, and later on they take those open stuff and they expand on their own, or every data will be existing on Bezel? And for example, somebody wants to create their own business besides the prototype things, and then is there possible like they get IP, like intellectual property, is that belongs to that person, or it's still the entire code's only limited inside Bezel's cloud? That's just my questions for some no-code, low-code platform.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one way to think about it is how just your typical 2D design tools work today, right? So if you design something on something like Figma, they wouldn't own the IP to what you designed on the tool, right? It's like even though technically the data is stored in the cloud, the IP to what you're designing and prototyping and building is owned by you still, right? So I think like in a very similar way, Bezel is currently at least a design tool that is not meant to pump out like the real build, like the real application at the end of this pipeline. I think that's what Unity would help with, kind of like the slide where we talk about like what each tool is really used for today. I see Bezel as a design tool today for designers to collaborate with their team, and then eventually, if they want to turn it into a real app, that ships on the Vision headset or that ships on the Meta headsets, the Quest headsets, then you would have to use something like Unity or Unreal to port it into an engineered application, which is very similar to how, if the designer builds out like a mobile app design today on Figma, someone still has to ship an actual application using something like Xcode for iOS. Yeah. Great. Okay. I see Alex also asked, I'm new to 3D. How can I quickly add assets to the scene? I think kind of like what we did with the bike here. Let me just go back to files. There are a lot of different assets that you can quickly drag and drop from the shared library into the file. So what that means is, we have this library right here at the top with these 4 square icons. And then if you click on all under the Bezel library, there's a basic repository of assets that you can access. So if I want to add a desk for a desktop, AR desktop experience prototype, I can just click that and then drag it here. And then that would add a desk right there. So there's that. Yeah, so you wouldn't have to model anything for those. Are there any other places or libraries you recommend if they're not in Bezel? Sketchfab is a pretty common one where you can just get free 3D models, GLB, FBX. It's pretty common. And all you got to do when they are downloaded on your computer is drag and drop them into Bezel. So I can actually kind of go through one example with you. So let's say I have all these windows here. Let's say I have a OBJ file for a tree, for example. I'll just drag and drop that into the file. And now we have a tree. So it takes 2 seconds. It takes 1 second to just like drag and drop it into the Bezel file. And now I have a
What types of files, 3D files does Bezel take? Like
yes,
OBJ, FBX, and
OBJ, FBX, GLTF or GLB, rather GLB files, because they're binary, they combined all the textures in, which is more convenient for the Bezel to take, and STL files, more for 3D printing.
Is there any limitations for the file size? For example, like AMB or what size for Bezel to run?
Yeah, there's no hard limit, but general rule of thumb, the smaller the faster.
So low poly, right? If low poly preferred.
Low poly would be generally preferred, but we also support a lot of high poly stuff. So let me see if I have like an FBX file. This might be huge, but or rather that's a little too big. I wonder if there's a higher poly thing I just have around me.
Yeah, because sometimes when I drag the file which is too big, and the entire, for example, browser will crash. Like what's the highest, the like the limitation?
Yeah.
Just curious, yeah. But it's fine
sure.
if there's no answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is a bit more high poly. And it has an actual texture for the shirt. But yeah, so I mean, there's no hard limit on any of these model imports and anything. I mean, kind of like Figma, if you import like a 600 pixel by 600 pixel image, that works well. If you import it like a 600 megabyte image in Figma, that would probably lag the app a little bit. So
yeah, long time ago, we had another speaker. Frank, he was working on Lens Studio, and he created a really cool inspection, like a crime scene, and it's a game using Snapchat, and Snapchat's limitation, the entire file is 8 MB. And when I saw there are so many cool stuff and everything is very detailed, I asked him how can I even do this? The file size is 8 MB, and he said, this is the professional 3D modeler comes in. You don't use the Vedix. It's more like using the texture to fake or shader to fake the entire reality. So low poly, but with the texture that is baked so well that you couldn't even see that is low poly. Yeah, so that's just what I.
Yeah, exactly.
The professional one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what the whole game industry is like, right? So like
a billboard.
If you see trees far away in a 3D game, they rarely would have every leaf of the tree modeled in 3D. They would rather zigzag different textures that just to look like it's actual 3D.
Yeah, like a billboard. When you go to it, all the texture face you, and behind it is nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much.
Karina, I think.
Serena, yeah.
Did you have a question?
Feel free to.
Oh yeah. I was just wondering, I noticed when you did the prototype view in the Quest headset and on I guess Apple's new prototype for spatial reality, it kind of started farther away. And I was wondering if in the prototype you can set where the viewer starts, so they don't have to like scroll like another step to interact with what users would deal with.
Yeah, 100%. So we have a camera that helps with that. So cameras are very useful for times when you want to set like the POV to start in the app. So yeah, like here we're starting from like a zoomed out place. But if we add a, let's say we want people to start like with this view in particular, it's a bit more zoomed in. I can click on the objects menu and then add a camera here. And that would add a camera too. So if I add like the initial camera, I could change the start view to initial camera. And what that would allow me to do is when I go to the play mode, the prototype mode, and share this link with other people, that they would start in the initial camera view.
Oh, okay, that's cool. And I was also you mentioned that it's just a tool for designers to communicate their ideas in Unity, like a basic outline thing, kind of like similar to Figma, like you have that HTML, CSS, basic versions of designs. Do you have that something similar for this? Makes sense.
Do you mean like a basic converter from the design to code? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like you can do the inspect tool on Figma and see
Yeah.
the HTML. So that's something similar for
Right. Yeah. So
Bezel
that's
for.
Yeah, we don't have like an equivalent of that right now from like a coding perspective, because sometimes Unity would use like C# scripting to like get the code in. You don't have that right now, but that is part of our plan. That engineers can always kind of inspect different objects still, like in Bezel. So if they want to like recreate this floating sphere like in their spatial app, they can still get the hex code, like, oh, it's like AAFFA2. And like that might help. Obviously, it's not the same as like exporting out CSS code, but that's something that we're definitely working on.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Ashik said, is there any good story behind how we came up with Bezel? Yeah, I mean, this is basically the story, right? It's like, we were working at Oculus together, the co-founders, and then we realized that there was a strong need for a collaborative tool like that. So yeah, I could go on and on, but I also want to cap it. Ahmad?
Oh yeah, hi. I have a question. So I've seen like videos of Bezel, like instead of using the sticks for Oculus, that they're using the hands movement. So how do you do that in Bezel?
I see. Using your hands to interact with the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have like a hands capability in our documentation page. So if you just go to our website and then click on Docs, you'll see the hand interactions page, where it shows you how hand gestures can interact with the Bezel files.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hope that helps. So we also have like a mobile AR view where I didn't show that today, but if you use your mobile AR, it would also detect like tap movements and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Jim, sorry, I think you're also in the queue.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you do pass-through within the Bezel environment?
Yes. So another page in the documentation is called the pass-through.
Okay.
And that would show you, we have like an opacity slider and that's the opacity of the environment around you. And once you put that opacity to 0, you will see that you can experience the Bezel file directly in the world around you.
Okay, cool. And I was wondering about storage. I'm just assuming that the models are going to be stored on your servers and be served on demand, and that you're going to end up charging for bandwidth. Is that correct?
We're not charging for bandwidth right now. We would, if we do charge in the future, separate out the pricing from the models that you put in. So like, it would be like a team subscription plan like every month, and not have to do with like the bandwidth of the model loading in the file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Professor Profeta, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's Anthony. So, wow, I'm just floored. I just want to say I'm floored because I did a project with University of Southern California, 2016, and it was starting to bring in virtual environments for research, library research, and yeah, it's so much better than my Photoshop prototype files. 128 layer file and trying to get curvature. Dude, this is rocking. I'm looking forward to bringing it to clients, to students, to peers. I hope we can connect online.
Yeah, no, I would love to. Just send me a connection request on LinkedIn, and I can also
Already done, man. It's already done.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, we will chat.
Right.
Yeah, I would love to, also chat with different students and school opportunities. We already onboarded a lot of design programs and, across universities in the States. So that can definitely happen.
Yeah, I work with the graduate and undergraduate program at Jefferson University in Philadelphia.
Awesome.
So, all right. Well, we'll definitely talk. I just want to really, where the hell were you in 2016? That's all.
I was, I was working on Oculus stuff. Awesome. Yeah, but thanks for your kind words and your support as well.
By all means. Pleasure to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah, pleasure to meet you as well. Marcio, good to see you again.
Hey mate, how are you?
Good.
I just want to add that I've been using Bezel for months, I don't remember. And I'm really shocked because I stopped using Bezel for the past 2 months, I guess. And there is a lot of updates. So if this is the first time using Bezel, trust me, this team are updating a lot of textures and animation. The thing of the spectral animation is really dope. So you need to just join in the Discord and see the tutorials. It's really easy. And
yeah, congrats
because this product looks every month really dope. I just want to add that. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for your constant support. It really means a lot. And yeah, I mean, to your point, there is a very hardworking team behind the Bezel, just fixing all the bugs that exist, putting out all the new features that you're seeing today. And yeah, we're all motivated by the vision that we have, right? That we want an easy tool for designers to get into spatial design. And it is what the next platform for computing will be. And I think, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Absolutely, Julian. But you're also evidence that there's all sorts of. I mean, I won't even get into why the winters, right? But so like in a very narrow case, Ceiling Cat bless Jinha, right?
Yeah.
But there's with you and your co-founders, there's nothing like practitioners inventing. So bravo, and I look forward to all that you're offering.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for your support. Yeah, I think oftentimes it comes down to the tools that people have available and accessible to them to actually participate and contribute to the space. And so that's what I wanted to focus my time on, is like, just this tool.
Phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we could wrap it up here. Like an hour and 20 minutes or so. Hopefully I was able to be helpful and be worthwhile for your Saturday. But yeah, would love to stay in touch. Like I said, join our Discord to stay up to date on what's changing in the future. There's a lot that changes on Bezel every week. So I would love for you to stay in touch in the community. Let's get connected on LinkedIn, all that stuff.
You guys heard him. Julian wants us to go and break his shit. So
yeah, no, please, bug reports, right? It's it's important. Cool. All right. Thanks, Dom, for hosting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right. Yeah.